5:30. Would you please stand and join Charles Alderson in the pledge? First for the United States.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas pledge.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please join Lloyd Hobson in a prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for your many blessings. And God, we just ask you to be here with us tonight, just to bless our fellowship together, Lord, and just help us to make wise decisions for our children, for the students, for the teachers, and our community, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
Student spotlight.
All right. Well, our first order of business is to recognize a young man who's very patriotic. And this came to my attention about, a month or two ago. Joyce Cole was at a basketball game, and there wasn't anyone else around, and Landry couldn't see her. But when the national anthem started, Landry stood at attention and put his hand over his heart and did the pledge with them. And so that made such an impression on Joyce that when no one else is watching, no one else is watching, he would do that. And so we wanted to honor Landry Pritchett tonight for that, and then some other things his teacher said about him, that he has such enthusiasm in the classroom, especially the subjects that interest him. He gets into character during a recent drama unit. His performance was entertaining to watch. The other kids loved it. And I also have a little bit of his writing here, where he talks about America's soldiers fight for their freedom. Their tunics are wet, their boots are soaked with mud, they're on the ground and in the air, they carry their heavy backpacks and loaded belts, they carry machine guns for miles at a time, they would die for their country. So he loves to talk about patriotism in America, and so we want to honor Landry tonight, and any teachers that are here, we want y'all to come up and take a picture with him as well. So Landry, come on up. Teachers, do y'all want to come on up? Principals? Oops, sorry. This will be in the newspaper.
Smile, Mary.
Thank you. And then for Lonnie back there. Congratulations. Yeah. Thank you guys, yes. Well, our next spotlight should be a total surprise. There's been an elaborate ruse to get Philip and Shauna Martin here. And so, so Mr. Alderson's an excellent liar. He said we were going to honor Marilyn, which is a total ruse. We weren't planning on that. Marilyn's worth honoring, but and so
She was a mean 5th grade teacher.
oh,
10th grade too, right?
no.
6th grade.
Yeah.
And you were a good student.
Yeah. Well, I want to give Charles and Calvin a little bit of time to speak to, but also I've got some input. Ricky Phillips said when we hired them, they were home run. I thought that was a good sports analogy. He said they go above and beyond whatever is needed. They both do a great job. Philip is high school cross country and girls track head coach. Shauna is the junior high girls coordinator. They're great with our students, the programs, the teams. They have a genuine love for being here and being important. And then Susie said about Shauna's dedication to her students and athletes is unparalleled. Her tireless efforts go well beyond the classroom and the court, directly contributing to the development of every student. Her ability to consistently support our campus and her ever-present smile makes her a source of positive energy. We're so grateful Shauna's here. And then Liz talked about Philip and said from the moment he set foot on campus, Philip modeled an amazing work ethic and commitment to doing whatever it takes to make our students succeed. In addition to coaching and working with special ed students, Philip teaches a homeroom group of students so that our core academic teachers have time to teach intervention groups. He's also collaborated with our Adopt a School battalion in fall so they can take part in our cross-country meets. And his team player mindset is cultivating a lot of good relationships on the campus and in the community. So lots of good things about you two. And Charles, Calvin, what do y'all want to add?
Go ahead.
It's interesting because I tried to get him here 2 years ago. I met them years ago at an event, and ever since I met them at an event, they were always one of the most positive people I ever met. And I remember when I had cancer, they didn't even texted me or sent me a message and always said, I'm praying. Always the most positive. Every time I see them, they're just the nicest people. She's a little nicer than him. But you could just see the kids and everyone. Just one of the best things Gatesville ever hired was those two. You couldn't ask for a nice couple of people. And even their kids are so nice. So they got really good. You could just tell by their kids that they do an amazing job.
Charles, anything else?
Well, Philip was the head coach at EVM when I went over there several years back. And he and I got to be real good friends. I've been trying to get him here for an extended period of time. And it's been a difficult task. I hope he speaks to me after tonight. And his son would have been here tonight, but he's sick, sent home from work today, and he even supposedly we contacted your mom, but the weather's kind of bad. But, man, we're glad to have both of you here. It's good to have you as a friend. And we expect many good days ahead and years. So.
I would have gotten you here sooner, but I take everything Calvin and Charles says with a grain of salt.
I didn't understand that. That's right. We're welcome to have you here. I want you to know that.
Thank you very much.
Well, guys, y'all come on up here and get your certificates. Principals, Calvin, Charles, y'all want to get the picture too?
I think they have to have a speech too.
Runners, do y'all want in here with them?
Yeah, I think the two brothers should come join. Once again, I'm not just appropriately.
That's okay, that's okay. You got on your Gatesville gear.
But you know, Finley told me Saturday that these two wanted to come by and tell you
That's really.
thank you too, to be here also.
Please.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Well, we'll combine our next item. It's more appreciation for these guys up here. So Roger Miller is here. He comes every year, which we're very thankful, Roger, coming and giving a proclamation to School Board Appreciation Month is always in January. And this was another particularly, tough year to be in public school. And these guys helped us a lot, in particular, getting the 3 pennies passed. That was a big thing because it helped fund the district, and we're still able to give teachers raises despite no help from the state and a lot of other obstacles. And so these guys do a great job. They listen to people in the community, and they're always willing to give them their ear and relay stuff to me. And so we're very proud of this school board, and they're a hardworking group. And Roger, you've got an official proclamation for them as well?
I do. First off, I say this, and it's a little bit rhetorical. Lord, you're going to hear it for the first time this year. That there's a retired Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. And he said a number of years ago, I heard him speak, he asked, what's the most important election that you vote in? And ultimately, that answers the school board election. Because that affects every young person in your community, and it truly is, it shapes our future. So first off, I want to thank you for the time and the dedication that y'all give back to this community. Once a hornet, always a hornet. That's what I always say. And so you're shaping the future. And with that, I was kind of
I don't often do this, you know, I'm not Facebook stalking anybody, but I believe Ms. Lee, you're on year 20 or 22 now. Is that right?
Oh, it's
22? 20, 2004. 2 decades. 2 decades of dedication, you know, and how you're, I know there's a lot of late nights of cussing and discussing that go on in this room, on occasion, but it really, you know, that's just an example of the dedication that you have when you're voting on your school board members, you know, their commitment to our youth, to the faculty, to the administration, which really develops and cultivates, you know, the culture and the lifestyles that we want our children to be exposed to. So specifically for you, thank you. I don't have something unique for you, maybe later.
No, you're okay.
We'll settle for a cup of coffee. I'll buy you. So with that, I do have a proclamation that this is in fact School Board Recognition Month. Coryell County Proclamation number 2024-01. Whereas the mission of the public schools is to meet the diverse educational needs of all children and empower them to become competent, productive contributors to a democratic society and an ever-changing world. And whereas local school board members are committed to children and believe that all children can be successful learners and that the best education is tailored to the individual needs of the child. And whereas local school board members work closely with parents, educational professionals, and other community members to create the educational vision we want for our students. And whereas local school board members are responsible for ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system. And whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district, to include tax raises, that's not in here though, to the school district, to the public, and the public's expectations to the district. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Commissioners Court of Coryell County does hereby proclaim the month of January 2024 as School Board Recognition Month and declare our appreciation to the members of the Gatesville School Board and urge all citizens to recognize the dedication and hard work of local school board members and in working with school board members to mold an educational system that meets the needs of both today's and tomorrow's children. Thank you.
Well, I do remember your dad being in school.
That is,
And your mother teaching, so your family had a lot to do with this
well,
business too.
I think Dad was just trying to cover for me, I think is what it was. Maybe to keep me out of trouble a little bit. But, no, really my heartfelt appreciation for the time and effort that y'all do give. So thank y'all so much.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Photo.
Yes, and but we'll take a group picture with Roger as well, but Jenny Fuquay, who's our new horticulture teacher at the high school, does a wonderful job. The guys got a plant, it's a big plant. So the guys get the plants and then the ladies have the nice bouquet and the nice cups there. So London probably helped put that together for you.
She did. I know what color hers is, so I
Okay,
can take it
so
home.
make sure you take it. All right. Well, we'll take a group photo with Roger for the newspaper.
And the floral design.
Roger, thanks for doing this.
No, I mean, this is a fun.
Yeah.
This is out of
All the things you have to do.
out of all the things I do, this is fun.
Yeah.
But, I
We're
don't
gonna
know.
make Roger look short.
I know, yeah. Well, here, why don't we get why don't we get Coach Alderson here to make me even look shorter? I mean, if we can just get all of you tall people there.
I'll get on the end.
Where do you want me?
Oh, it's down there.
He'll make me look short anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, count of three. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. I don't want to do it. Thank you. You see tall.
Bye, Roger. See you.
Is there anyone here tonight that wants to make a public comment on an item that's not on the agenda?
Not signed up there.
No, okay. Moving right along, we will have a report on Texas Academic Performance Report.
Affectionately known as our TAPER report. In accordance with the Education Code, every year we have to have a public meeting of our TAPER report, and this is information gathered from all the test taking in 2023 in the spring, all the STAR tests and EOCs, and it's disaggregated in a multitude of ways, all types of ways. The TAPER report in full is 32 pages. The glossary to decipher the TAPER report is 47 pages, and I've got 54 slides that help us coordinate it, color code it so that we can look at it more easily. But we're not going to go through each one of those. You're able to read those on your own. But I am going to extract some of that information so that we can look at some of our takeaways and how we use it in the day-to-day operations of the schools and working with our students. And so we're getting the slides pulled up.
Scott, what is that under, do you know?
Did you give me those on the board book?
Mm-hmm.
Then they should be on the board book.
Oh, it's in the board book?
Yes,
Okay.
under his highlight.
I have it on thumb drive if you need it. Always have a plan B.
Now it's frozen.
No pressure.
Well, now I have to talk even faster. So we'll have to
Might have to tell him which one it is, Scott. I think it's that one.
presentation on that.
Yes.
I had to pull that up with me too.
Plug this back in and see if it'll.
Oh, is this your?
Yeah,
Oh, that was your, I thought it was a thumb drive, sorry.
Otherwise, I'll have to say back up, back up. Okay. There we go. And so the TAPER report is also, we have to do this every year. After this meeting, it'll all be published. The full report will be published on our website. You can also go to TEA and you can get this information from there. And the glossary will also be available. Talking about accountability, the state uses this TAPER report for our accountability, but no accountability was assessed. There's no official A, B, C, D, no grade was given because of the legislation that's going on. The state is being sued, not legislation, but the litigation. The state is being sued on their practices and system of accountability. And so we're gonna have to wait for that to all subside before we get an official grade. But there's still ways that we can break this down and use it. The 3 domains that they use is under student achievement. Just like whenever you get your report card home, the kids, did you pass? So we want to know if our kids passed and how they did. There's also the school progress, the percentage of students that improve to the next year from one year to the next. And then also those students that received accelerated instruction, those that we call intervention or RTI, how did they do? They did not meet the standard the year before? Did they meet it? Did they approach? What did they do? How did they improve? And so that's part of the school progress part. And then we have closing the gap, which is the federal rating, where they calculate all the ethnic groups and how did they do, and they start comparing those different groups to each other. And then there's also other groups such as like your departments and your programs with SPED and at-risk and those things that are all into that calculating machine that they do up there at the state. There's also some levels of support that are designated off of your ABC, off of your grade, and that's your targeted support with some improvement, your additional targeted support, and your comprehensive support. And all of that has not been officially sent down to us through the state. This is just some of the websites that you can go to and look for the TAPER report and the glossary. This is where you can reach it, or how you can get hold of the TAPER report. And now we have an overview of the, sort of like the table of contents. It's going to break it down by their performances, and they do by grade level, by subject, ethnic group, programs, like I mentioned. And something I want to talk a little bit about the approaches, meets, and masters. Now they don't talk about who did not meet the standard in the TAPER report. They just talk about those that approached and above. And that's based off of those that they believe are going to be able to move up from one level to the next with some targeted intervention. And so if you've approached in 2023 with targeted intervention, they expect you to be able to go to meets and then go to masters. So they want you to improve each time you go. Meets require short-term intervention. And so if you rate meets in 2023, they expected 2024 with some short term, maybe a certain subject or certain limit of time that you'll be able to advance to the next one. And Masters is requiring little or no intervention at all. So the theme here is about intervention. Because if you think about it, we're talking about 2023, and then this is 2024. They're going to be taking that test again in the spring. We're looking at how they did last year, and then projecting how they're going to do in 2024. And if they had some gaps last year, we're going to have to fill in those gaps. So interventions are very important for us to be able to fill in those gaps as we're preparing them to take this year's test, because they've moved a whole nother grade level. And so we have to be able to break it down by individual, by test, by TEKS, and that's how we set up our RTI. Our intervention is off how they did in those subject areas and not necessarily off of the taper report. And so that intervention is a key point, and that's why it's such a big deal in all our grade levels and campuses. And then you can see the rest of the table of contents there. So if you want to know if we passed, we want to take all grades and all subjects and say, how did we do? Did they pass across the board? And we have our student achievement domain. So that's what we're dealing with for these next few slides. And so you can see where we have the state, the region, and the school. And yes, we did improve against ourselves, and we also improved against the state. And so did we pass? Yes, we passed. How did we do in language arts, ELA, and reading? So just like when the kid brings a report card home, you want to know if they passed, then you start diving down into different subjects and see how they did. And so if you break it down, you can see that we did improve in ELA, in reading, in mathematics. We stayed the same here, and we're the same as the state. So this is an area of concentration as we move forward, because we always want to be improving, either against ourselves or with the state. This is in science in all grades, all levels, and you can see how we've improved against ourselves and against the state. And then this is the for social studies. Same thing, we still improved against ourselves and the state. And so that is the student achievement domain. So they take this category and they work it into their master calculations whenever they come up with the accountability. The next domain is school progress. So this is where we're talking about, it's only in English, ELAR, English Language Arts and Reading, and math. They don't take in science and social studies in account in this part of the calculation. And so we're comparing them against the state, the district against the state, and you can see that it's ELA here and math is here on these colors, and you can see the grade level across the bottom here, and you can see how we did individually. We're going to progress through, and this is also grade 7th and 8th. This is how we did if we grew, still in the school progress domain, if we grew in the high school level on just the English and math part. And now this is both, reading and math together, or break it down, and you can say reading and math, it's separated that way. So they take the same information and they disaggregate it in many different ways for us to look at it and hopefully figure out how their calculations work. But you can see in both reading and language arts that we were below the state in both subjects put together whenever you combine them. Still in the school progress domain, so we talked about the first part about whether they grew, and now we're talking about the accelerated learning, those that received interventions. Those that did not meet, did they advance by going through accelerated learning? And so here you have the breakdown of the grades and versus the state and district ELAR and math. Again, ELAR and math are the only two subjects that are covered in this area. And so you can go through and see how we progressed at the 4, 5, and 6. Now third grade is not included because they didn't have a way of improving. They're first time test takers. So third grade is not included in this part of the calculation of the grade. And there you have high school, same information on the slides going forward, and then you have the accelerated learning for both reading, and then you can break it down reading and math. And so in our accelerated learning categories, we did quite well, and so that's why we put a lot of focus in that, because these are the students that did not meet and they were able to approach the next go around. And so that's one thing that we use for our RTI to improve in that school progress domain. Now we're talking about the closing the gap domain. This is where the ethnic groups come into play, and they break it down, and you'll have on all the slides you'll have the ethnicity broken out here. You'll have the 2023 percentage there. You'll have the 2022 percentage, so we can see how we did against ourselves. and then you have the state for the different grade levels up here at the top. And I just want to kind of point out that on the slides, a lot of these ethnic groups, not a lot, there's 3 of them that were mainly taken out because you have to have at least test takers in these groups in order to be calculated. And so American Indian, Asian, and Pacific Islander have been removed because they're not calculated because we didn't have enough in that enrollment in those areas to be included in those areas. So you'll see a little bit different on these slides than what you see in the full report because they'll have like a star or a dash or a 0, something marking that we didn't have enough people enrolled in those categories. But for the sake of combining this, I just took them out of the legends here. And you might also see we're like in a specific grade level that there is no bar because we didn't have enough to categorize in that area. We didn't have at least 10. But we did have in this one here, so it's included so that you can see how they progress, how they rate through the grade levels 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so this is just how you can read the slide going forward, and the same thing applies here out. But if you want to compare how did we do on all of these, you can say, okay, well, how did we do against ourselves in 6th grade here, and reading performance up at the top. We improved against ourselves and we improved against the state. So 82 and 77, so we improved. So you just read this all the way across that way. 81, we're the same as we were last year. We would consider this not improving because we always want to get better. So this is an area that stands out for us. And then did we improve against the state? And yes, we did. And it's also in grade 8, 87 over 76, so we improved against ourselves and then also against the state. So that's how you can read all the slides and stuff that are in your packet, instead of having to go through each and every one of these going through. Now for these slides, from 21 all the way like to 38, it breaks it down this way. And we could go through and we can talk about each and every one of them, but there's one thing that I need to point out, and this is not how we break down our groups. We don't go by ethnic group and say, okay, we're taking all these types of kids and putting them in a room. That's not how we break it down. We can go look and say who's not reading, who has trouble calculating, who doesn't understand the science and social studies. We break it down that way. The state gives it to us in a report by ethnicity, just to make sure that we're not overlooking a group that's not represented well in our district, so that we can see the bigger picture, because we do get ingrained in depth in the details of the TEKS. So we don't break it down this way, and that's why I'm not going through and spending all the time with the different groups. That's not to say it's not important. It's just that's not the way we break down our groups, because we look at their actual skill in the TEKS that they're not having trouble with and break it down by that way. Does that make sense? Okay. And so I'm going to kind of just go through these. All of these are talking about, that you can see the performances up at the top. There's the algebra down to talking about the approaches. There's some meets. Now we're going to talk about a little bit about all grade levels that are above, or all grade levels in all subjects here. So we're talking about meets. At the very beginning, we talked about those that passed, those that had approaches that are going to need some targeted intervention. This is a graph about those that meet the grade level or above, which master's is included. And so they may need some short-term interventions for this slide here. And so you can see that where it's only the state, the region, and the district, and this region is region 12. Schools that are in our region we're compared to with each other. And you can see that we're just looking at ourselves at the district. We improved against ourselves, and we were improved against the state. This is ELAR, and so we improved against ourselves, and we improved against the state. This is mathematics, which is a focus for us this coming up year. And we did not improve against ourselves, and we were below the state in those areas. Here's our science, how we did. You can see that we've improved in all those areas. And then our social studies, the same thing. So math is a focus for us moving forward. This next group of slides is based off of 2021 and 2022. So we're talking 2 years ago, after they get all the PEMS in, all the attendance, and they start looking at things from 2 years ago. They put it on this year's report, but it's not the immediate data that we have from this past year. But that's the way the report comes to us, and it's a matter of tracking and seeing how we're doing with it. And so again, we just want to make sure that we keep track of our students, but it's not a way that we break down anything for our RTI based off of this. Attendance is always a concern. That's what funding is tied to, and so that goes across all the grade levels. Campuses are doing a great job of incentivizing coming to school and so they're going to continue to work on that. But you can see the state average, which is the 2021, 2022, and then the year before. We reported in our PEIMS a 94.3. And so you can see that we've gone up in the district from the 91 of this school year to 94.3 in this school year. There may be some adjustments because this all has to go through the state and has to be reported back to us. And so there might be some adjustment to that, but that's what we turned in to the state after this past year. And so this is also going off of last year's, or 2 years ago data, off of the 2021 school year. This is our dropout rate. Again, off of the 22, our CCMR rates. And then this is our SAT scores, still off of the class of 2022. And this is our ACT scores off the class of 22. Now we get to our student ethnic distribution. And so you can see the breakdown here of the district. This is our district, and this is public education in schools throughout the state. Here's some demographics that we have in programs that break down. And just to point out that our ESL at 5.1 is growing. We're very close to having bilingual classes. The ESL numbers are exploding, and we can bring a report on a different time for that. And our special education is also growing quite a bit, mainly because dyslexia is now part of SPED, and so we're having to push those students that were covered under 504 for dyslexia are now covered under SPED. And so we've got a couple of years to move all our dyslexia students under the under the umbrella of SPED, special education. And so you can count on those numbers to continue to go up, and that's by design of the state. They're forcing us to put more kids underneath there because they move dyslexia into that program. Teacher ethnic breakdown, you can see how we are in the district and how we are in other public schools in the state. And then you have the teachers by experience. And this is just information for us. Let's take a 10,000 foot view so that we can see holistically how we stand with the teacher breakdown and with experiences. And so it's a way of tracking. This in the education code is higher education, where they have to report to us students that have enrolled in their schools. And so here's the website that has that information for it. And in years past, they've always reported a GPA. They didn't report it this time, and I'm not sure why. But the GPA is not listed, so that's why I put not reported here. But they did report we had 34 students. This is fiscal year fall 2022. So that next year they had 34 in 4-year programs, 40 went to 2-year programs, 11 were independent colleges, universities, 3 are not trackable. And I had to look that up in the glossaries because they're out of state. They can't track them. They're not required to report to us in Texas how those students are doing. So 3 of them are not trackable. And then there's 101 not found. That they didn't, from 189 graduates, the 101 were not reported as going into a 2 or 4 year university. And that's all the slides. Now I know I went through that quickly, concerned about time, but we can stop and look at any of the slides you want to. Or after you've had a chance to review it, you say, hey, bring this up for another report, we can always do that as well. But that's the TAPER report in a nutshell. A couple of our takes away is math and intervention, shoring up our interventions, because we have to fill those holes while we're moving forward. And also we want to start looking at how we compare against ourselves. We always want to improve, and we want to improve against the state as well. Now a couple of things about where it all happens in the classroom. Teachers aren't supposed to disaggregate all this data. How am I doing against these different ethnic groups? That's something that we'll do at the district level with our ICs. The teachers are worried about their PLCs. They're worried about the data that they have in front of them. The students that they come in and meet on, how did we do on our last benchmark? How are our students progressing through the last lessons we had? They have to worry about that day to day so that we can keep moving them forward. And so then whenever we'll have our reports and be able to interject into the PLCs and kind of look at how they're doing and compare it with that 10,000 foot view and see that we're on track, and hopefully we can set some reasonable expectations on how we can improve whenever we compare ourselves against the state and against ourselves. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any statistics that show how a kid from Texas compares to a kid who moves in from California? Or is there anything like that?
No, unless they put California as another ethnic group type over there, it's not broken down that way.
But nothing like that to compare our abilities or, if we're doing as well as other states.
Yeah, and that's another border issue, keeping Californians out. No, I'm sorry, no politics. No politics.
Well, I just chose California, could be, yeah,
Yeah, could be any of them
Kentucky.
coming through.
Oklahoma,
Mhm.
but, yeah, okay.
Not in this report.
So, this report is strictly STAR testing.
STAR and end of cycle EOCs.
And then of course, things like how many people go to college.
Yeah, demographics and ethnic breakdown and those types of things. Yeah, we have to break down all the individual tests and see who didn't pass certain TEKs and arrange all our RTI based off of that stuff, off of those, important things in our curriculum.
And it had a little bit of ACT, SAT.
Oh, I see. Just how well you did on it.
But any kid who moves in on Monday and the test is on Tuesday, they're taking the test.
They are, but if it's not going to be calculated if they're not here on our snapshot day and test taking day. But if they show up here, they're going to get a test in front of them. But they have those that are not calculated in there because they weren't here on those 2 days.
Is that day in the fall?
It's the last Friday in October,
Yeah.
and then the test taking day. Did you suspect that you were going to be low in math the way it showed up, or was that a surprise? No, it was a surprise. Wasn't expecting it. And we have to dive down into it and say, okay, where did the trip come from? There's different things that you look at. One of it is looking back at that grade level for whatever. So if you're talking math, how did they do in 3rd grade in math? What did that look like the year before? How were we able to fill those holes for them as they moved up? It also is about teacher turnover. Did they have a teacher that has been there for a while or not? And so those things, all these different types of things play into it. But yeah, it was a surprise coming through. We have strong math teachers, and there's also things looking at, how well we did in the past and what types of questions were asked this time than in other times. Science is going to be an area that we're paying close attention to because we have new adoption coming out. There's new TEKs coming out in science, so the test is going to be different. And so how well we were doing in science may look a little different next year because they changed all our targets for us. And so we're expecting that to look a little different next year.
Also, all these kids experienced the COVID nightmare where they weren't in class a lot. So you've got gaps that are trying to fill as fast as they can with all the RTI.
Yeah, and in reading, we kind of, during the COVID time, they didn't have that socialization, so there's not a lot of talking, conversing, and writing. They're all watching things on screen. So we kind of watch that a little bit closer. And then math, but if you think about math, everything you have to build on it. So if you don't have your multiplication tables here, and you're going to have trouble all the way through. So we have to make sure that we're filling those holes as they go because they also didn't get math practice. They might have been on their tablet, but they're out there playing math games. And besides, you're teaching yourself a lot of times during that COVID isolation. And we're seeing a lot of different gaps, as they move forward.
It seems like everything else kind of, had the trend going up, and then math didn't. I just wondered if it was, if we kind of had that, if we saw that coming, or if it was just.
No, I didn't, and that's why we have to dive into it and look into it, see where, because if it's, I'm not saying fixable, but if something we can identify, that's the first step. Identify what it is, and then be able to put a plan around it.
Keegan, did you want to tell them a little bit, just anecdotally, about what you're seeing as far as new students that are non-English speaking and also homeschooled that have never been in school?
Yeah, something we've had a lot of this year. Like we've had more kids here than we've ever had this year, and we're over in several classes, and that's never happened in my time as administrator. But a big thing we're talking about that I saw a huge surge of this year were kids who've never been in school. So I ended up tracking, I think we counted 13 kids that we got at elementary who've never attended school, and not just first graders. I mean, some of that, but we have kids in 2nd and 3rd grade that have zero educational background, and we made some grade adjustments, which you can't take an 8, 9-year-old and push them all the way back, and so for the most part, we just have to kind of take them where they're at and then try to fill in those gaps. But we're having quite a few move in too from we've gotten from Guatemala, Mexico that have no English that are coming into, which we've always had a little of that, but so just seeing some different challenges too, because it's hard to teach a grade level standard, but then you also have a child who's never been taught to write their name or the alphabet or read, and so you're filling it in. So
there's no governing body that manages homeschool. You know, whenever you sign up to go to homeschool, you go to homeschool. Nobody's watching to see that. We don't get involved unless they come back to us and they try to enroll. Then we have to figure out what grade level they are, what reading level they are, and try to put them in the right place for it. And so that's one of the areas that you know, it's just there. It's one of our competition. If they're getting in trouble for attendance, a lot of times they withdraw and go to homeschool, because then now you can't bother me because I'm not enrolled in your school anymore, and that's the option the state gives them. We would like to be able to track homeschool a little bit better through truancy court. We have a good partnership with our county attorney's office, and so those that we file truancy on and they unenroll and they go to homeschool, they still require them to come and show progress to them at the JP's office, because we started the truancy process on them already. And but people knowing that, they're dropping out before then, as far as, you know, going to homeschool before that. We also, you know, trying to figure out how do we track some of those that are waiting out there and not waiting for them to come back because they're, for whatever reason, I don't know why they're coming back into school. Some of them think they can just skip kindergarten because they don't do anything in kindergarten, so we'll just start them in first grade. But, you know, we're trying to figure out what's going on, and so when we have our dropout recovery window at the beginning of the next school year, we'll have a list of those that did not show up and there are dropouts. We also want to pull a homeschool report, say who signed out to homeschool. Maybe we should make some contacts there and just see. They might slam the door in our face and say, I'm not coming back, I'm homeschool, but at least we can call and check and see what's going on and try to track them as well at the beginning as part of our, you know, getting them back into the mode of coming to school.
Is it because of the lawsuit that the timing of this report is so late?
Well, we had that zone of uncertainty back at the beginning where we had to figure out our own cutoff scores to say, hey, who needs to get interventions? Who's going to come to summer school? Who's got to be able to? We didn't have any of that information.
Normally they get all this data right at the beginning at the end of the summer, beginning of the school year. So if you've got all these issues that you want to conquer, you're just not getting information about them, and we have a test in 2 months.
That's the way the state likes to hold us, you know, over a barrel. That's what it feels like. You know, making sure that we don't improve or we don't look as good as we can.
Well, thanks to the 3 pennies, each campus received $8,000 for teachers to use for professional development. So we want to send them to some really good PD this summer, and hopefully help them get better and kind of get back on track. So.
And getting some certified teachers in our intervention areas to make sure that we're, you know, those things are, a lot of attention is put on the details. And you know, we have great, fantastic aides that are working in those interventions, but teachers giving them that information. Okay, this is what you need to work on. And so getting a teacher that can manage that is going to be also helpful moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Now we come to the consent agenda. We have minutes of the December meeting. The consent agenda, we go through and then we pull anything that you want to discuss. If not, we just adopt it. Financial statements of December 31st, bills and payroll for December, budget amendments, year-to-date budget amendments to fund balance, vital signs reports. That's kind of a report that we get from our finance officer about how the school's doing, a food service report. Does anybody want to pull any of those? Do I hear a motion to accept those? Charles, do I hear a second? Okay, Linda. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor? You got it. Information items. These are items that are not voted on, but we get information. Christmas on Marshall Street update.
So in December we had our Christmas on Marshall Street. It was our it's the first time we have done that here in GISD, and the attendance we had for that was it was just way more than we expected. It was a great turnout. We had between 600 and 800 people there. We had over 52 vendors, and all of our campuses came out. They fundraised. They interacted with the community. One of our goals of community outreach is that we as GISD become a hub for that. where we're a place where the community can come in, find the resources that they need, and be able to use those in their everyday lives. So we took that day to interact and to reach out, and it was a good event. Our CTE classes, they did well in their fundraising too. I know Mr. Lisenby's class, he asked next year that he would have 3 booths instead of just 1. The day ended earlier than we anticipated, but I think it's because the demand at the booths, everything was sold out early. So it was very positive. It was a good day. We had great community interaction with our choirs coming to sing, and our dance troops out there, and Mr. and Mrs. Claus out there taking pictures, and the Grinch, and so overall it was a good event. So
Now you're getting ready for the eclipse.
now we're getting ready for the eclipse. And in May we have our not back to school, our spring into summer. So everything summer safety, getting the kids ready for summer, and projects for them to do there. So.
Thanks, Pam.
Mr. Pollard, can I say,
Yeah.
that Christmas on Marshall, it was a great success. I was there, and it was
It was a lot of fun.
unbelievable. It was y'all did a great job.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Pam.
Educational philosophy review.
We review these next 3 items every year. The first one is the philosophy, and just to kind of give a little bit of a history. So back in 2017, we had that great big huge group of people come together and work in different groups and get the strategic plan together. And one of the big things that the board said at that point was don't let it sit on the shelf. And so we still use that as our guiding document. We do update it occasionally. The portrait of graduate, we tweaked that a little bit in 2019. And then we officially adopted Willie Clark's motto as our mission statement back in 2021. So we keep kind of revisiting it and looking at it. And but it continues to guide everything we do. And we didn't necessarily have any proposals to change anything unless you guys did. This is just an informational item. Are y'all still good with everything that we have there?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is the board operating procedures, and so that is kind of a rundown of all the different things that you guys do as governing bodies and responding to inquiries, and what do you do if you get an anonymous letter, and what do you do if you get a complaint, and just different things like that. And we've adopted some minor changes over the years, but for the most part that document stays basically the same. And another good fail-safe is the lawyers and TASB, they review that to make sure it's all consistent. So it's still all kosher unless you guys wanted to recommend anything for the next meeting that we change or update. Okay. And then the last one, I think Tara had one thing on the board activity calendar we might want to tweak or eliminate, but that's just kind of a rundown of all the different things you typically do by month. And so, again, we've done some minor changes over the years, and I think Tara found something that we might want to, was it a deletion, Tara?
Yes, in March, we no longer do the drug dog contract.
That's right.
So I think we probably need to bring that back to be in compliance.
Okay.
Bring that back to another meeting after we remove that so y'all can approve that again.
So we still do the drug dog, we don't pay InterQuest.
Yes.
We get it for free from the sheriff.
Yes.
So,
Oh, yeah.
it's just a wording thing. So, we're saving money by using their dog instead of buying the one from InterQuest to come, so. We can come back next month and have that tweaked.
I'll remove that and we'll bring it back next month and do it as an action item.
So again, kind of a minor thing, but we want it to be accurate, so makes sense. Anything else on any of those 3 documents y'all noticed or thought we needed to change or update? It's all pretty straightforward.
Good thing to review.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah.
Okay, action items. EIC local, repeating a high school course and grade implication.
So House Bill 3803 really put parents in the driver's seat as far as post-COVID. If a parent said, I think I want my first grader to be retained, they're kind of in the driver's seat on all that. This is also another little reiteration of that same bill, but if you did poorly in a high school course, you could retake it. You know, the lawmakers wanted the students to have that option. Now, I think it would be very rare that that would happen, but we ran through the example, and Liz and the high school team kind of brainstormed this with me, but basically, if you did really poorly on Algebra 2, but let's say you passed it, you made like a 71, and your parents are looking at it and say, Jimmy, you really need to retake that next year and maybe get a little bit higher grade because we're trying to get you into XYZ college. The student could do that so long as they took that course the very next year. You can't wait a year or 2 years and revisit it senior year. You've got to take it the very next year. The other thing is it can't get you behind on graduation. You can't say, well, now I got to do a 5th year high school to take that 4th math way on in the, you've got to double up. So then you'd have to take Algebra 2 and the math you were going to take anyway. If you do all of that and you get a better grade, we said at least you should get that grade to be the one that counts. If you retook it and you made a 70 and you made a 72 the first time, we'd still give you the 72. If you made a 72 the first time and you made an 84 the second time, we'd give you the 84 for GPA and purposes to try to help you out. Again, like I said, I don't think that that's going to happen very often. Just students looking down the barrel of, Charles, do you want to take pre-cal again?
No.
No. And so, but there is a situation though, if just life and limb was depending upon, okay, you're not going to get into this college unless you take this again, at least they've got that at their disposal. It's not a bad law. And we also wanted to give them the option of getting the GPA if they go through all the grief of doing it again and do better, we'll give it to them. So my recommendation is the board adopt the additional language for EIC local to address House Bill 3003. Our TASB policy analyst created this additional language. So specifically, it's the stuff in quotation marks back in the body. In accordance with admin regulations, the class rate calculation shall include the semester grades that result in the higher overall grade from a course that's retaken after a passing grade has been earned.
I hear a motion. Linda, do a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mary Ann, any further discussion? All in favor? And it passes. Okay, volunteer.
These next two items are kind of in conjunction with each other. So this first one is going to come into play in this next item, but we already have a GKG legal policy on procedures for a school volunteer program. There's nothing controversial about it. It's very mundane and straight to the point. Our TASB policy expert, Lexi O'Hare, she recommended that we adopt GKG local, which gives a little bit more detail on a school volunteer program. I've attached it there. It's very brief, straightforward, just some common sense protocols. And adopting that will help us address our next board agenda item, which has to do with the chaplain legislation that came out here recently. So every board in Texas before March 1st has to vote on whether or not you let chaplains be full-blown counselors, volunteers, or not allowed on the campus at all. And so we'll talk about that here in a minute. But anyway, taking this one step at a time, here's the policy itself. It's short. There's nothing controversial in it. Lexi from TASB had this written for us. A lot of other districts have very similar wording. So my recommendation would be that we adopt GKG local, which is developed by TASB and pertains to just school volunteer programs in general.
Do I hear a motion? Okay. Cheyenne, do I hear a second? Okay, Charles, any further discussion?
I have a question. On the training, the school does have training, or is there a statewide type training?
It's district developed.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything statewide that, typically if we have, it's kind of like our sub training. When we train subs, it's all done in-house. There's not a specific curriculum they give for us.
It's like one day or one afternoon?
Yeah.
Any other questions? All in favor? None opposed? Okay, now the next one on the volunteer chaplains.
Okay. So a lot of legislation this last go around, and here's a unique one. It's not, again, not a bad one. It's a very unique idea, but Senate Bill 763, which allows school districts to employ or accept as a volunteer a chaplain to provide support services and programs for students. So the bill required each school board in Texas to take a recorded vote by March 1st, and so we're addressing it tonight to go ahead and get it out of the way. And so, I spoke with our TASB expert, and I wanted to talk it over with you, but just kind of brainstorming this internally, I like the ideas of chaplains coming and helping us. They do that already. They're not chaplains per se, they're ministers, local ministers. They do things like they help us with baccalaureate, they lead or help the students with prayer at the pole. They do things like FCA, they help with FCA. If there's any sort of like student-led Bible study, I think sometimes they are in there. But I thought that getting them to, if, let's say for example, there was a horrible car accident and a student was killed, and you wanted the chaplains or ministers to come to the campuses and be a source of support, we thought that would be a great thing. The extreme other end of that would be, do you want to go ahead and make them a counselor? They're not really trained or certified to do that. So we kind of thought, well, let's do the kind of the option two, the medium one, the happy medium, which is, yes, we love and encourage chaplains, ministers, priests to come and volunteer. There's lots of different things we want to get them to do. There might be crises where we want them here, but we probably, some districts are banning them altogether. We don't want to ban them, but at the same time, we probably also aren't going to say, okay, you come be our high school counselor and work GPAs and class rank. They don't know how to do that. So my recommendation is the board to adopt option two, which is the resolution to accept chaplains as volunteers.
I'll make the motion.
Mary Ann has a motion to accept. Linda's second. Discussion.
Here's that page here. It's kind of a continuum. There's option one, option two, which is kind of happy medium, and option three, which is you won't permit them at all. Option two is yes, come, help us at times. And then option one is no holds barred, come take over this counseling job. So we thought kind of middle of the road.
Okay, all in favor of option two?
I have a question about
Yes,
that. Like, what if they're not a chaplain or a pastor or anything? It's just an individual, but a volunteer. Do you allow them to come in and do the same thing?
Give me an example.
Like to counsel kids, or serve under the same umbrella as a pastor, but they're not a pastor, just like a good person, a good Christian man coming in to talk with the kids if they need somebody to talk to. Is this limited to just pastors or chaplains, or is it open to other volunteers to do that?
I think the letter of law, what they're wanting us to look at are chaplains, people that are probably ordained by some sort of entity.
So you're not just letting everybody come in
Right.
and take care of this counseling?
But conversely, if we had a really good role model in the community, they may come do like a keep it real type session with the high school kids. But of course, they would be vetted, as far as like who they are, what they're doing. But
I just don't know if that was opening up a door for anybody to say,
Right.
oh, here I am, I'm volunteering to do this.
Right. Yeah. No, I think this still gives us the ability to vet those people.
Okay, once again, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. That concludes our board meeting. We'll go into executive session.
Thank
And
you,
it
guys.
is 6:28.